Hello, you beautiful nerds. The Ant-Man trilogy is complete. Like, seriously, when the first one came out, who thought we were gonna get 3 of these things? The first 2 Ant-Man movies are fine. Marvel definitely wanted the Ant-Man movies to be the closest thing to a straight-up comedy in this universe, but those movies never really hit for me. I mean, this moment is genuinely hilarious, but for the most part, the jokes don't really land, and the movies are just fine. They're fine. But this movie does not feel like an Ant-Man movie. That seems to be the common complaint about this flick, and the reason it doesn't feel like an Ant-Man movie is because this is a Fantastic Four movie. But you know what? Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about what we're talking about. So pour yourself a glass of your new friend's fluid so you can understand the new language, and let's talk about...
Come on, let's talk.
But first, Prelude. In the year of our Lord 2002, Peyton Reed was tapped to direct the first theatrically released film following Marvel Comics' first family, the Fantastic Four. This was way back when it was being made at Fox, and they weren't really vibing with Reed's vision of the film. Sounds like Fox was on their usual bullshit, being controlling, tight with money, and asking for commitment without a workable script under unreasonable time restrictions. They went through 3 different writers trying to crack the script before Reed left the project, and Tim Story ended up picking up the ball and making Fantastic Four in 2005. And we all know how that turned out. Reed is kind of a nut about the Fantastic Four. He said as much in a bunch of interviews, and Feige knows firsthand because he was a junior executive at Fox when Reed was first pitching the film. But years and years later, Reed himself would know what it's like to be the last-minute second choice for a comic book movie. After Edgar Wright backed out of directing the first Ant-Man movie, Reed was an easy choice to fill the position considering his relationship with the studio. He went on to direct Ant-Man and the Wasp, and that was... I mean, like I said, those are fine. But I was very excited about this new movie because after all the heavy lifting that the first 2 films did to develop these characters, Reed can finally make the Fantastic Four movie he always wanted to. And this isn't just me reading way too many John Hickman Fantastic Four comics, which, I mean, there's that. But Reed has said how much his love for the Richards family... that's funny. Peyton Reed, Reed Richards. That's kind of... whatever, I'm drunk. That's probably stupid. But you can tell that he fell in love with the idea of the super family a long time ago, and this movie totally satisfies that desire. Talking to Den of Geek, Reed said, "Absolutely, I poured that into these movies, particularly into Quantumania. I grew up loving Fantastic Four, and then I found myself directing the Ant-Man family, and there are similarities. I really did scratch that itch with these Ant-Man movies. The Quantum Realm really sort of, for me, represents reading those comics as a kid and bringing it into the Ant-Man world. But let's back up. What actually happens in this movie? Scott is taking it pretty easy. He just helped save the world a few years ago, wrote a book about it, and the Avengers haven't called him to do anything crazy, so he's just straight chilling and trying to make up for lost time with his now teenage daughter Cassie. Speaking of which, Cassie has grown up to be a little spitfire. She's doing some light vigilante justice, but she gets arrested, so she's not great at it. But she's white and has rich parents, so she's fine.
People still need help, Dad.
That's why we made this.
Wait a minute. You're sending a signal down to the quantum realm. Turn it off. Now!
I've been reading a lot of John Hickman lately, and this definitely felt like a Fantastic Four Negative Zone storyline. It gets so weird, and most of the stuff is super cool looking and creative. Every once in a while, it'll be like, okay, that's just a lady with a stick. But for the most part, the design of the subatomic world is pretty cool. I admit that I've never been impressed by Peyton Reed. I don't really like any of his movies, except Bring It On. That movie is just perfect. No notes. Despite some of the CGI looking a little janky, there were some interesting shots and trippy ideas explored. And even though the story gets a little clunky when it comes to the variant stuff, its main focus is on this great family Scott Lang has. It very much has a family dynamic which is unique to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Sure, the Guardians are like family, but this is like a real family who are like related by at least marriage. It's certainly what made the Fantastic Four stand out over the years. In these stories, there's weird shit going on everywhere, but it's all about this married couple, their best friend, and their annoying little brother. Reed leaned into that same vibe, and this was the smartest thing Reed could have done to keep Ant-Man relevant in the MCU without having to team him up with a cooler superhero. His power isn't a joke in this movie because they're not even really on Earth. He's just another weird guy with a weird power that comes in handy when weird shit happens. So let's actually talk about the MCU's first family. I liked Katherine Newton in this movie, but Emma Furman, in the very little screen time that she had in Endgame, blew me away. Pretty much every time I get to this scene, I tear up, and it's because of their reactions to each other. It's such a weird choice that they just up and recast this character, but whatever. I guess Newton has a really good agent. Paul Rudd is always amazing. I love him as this character, but I feel like they flubbed Scott's arc in this movie a little bit. At the beginning of the movie, to that point, he had only really fought for the ones that he loved, and his daughter calls him out on the fact that he hasn't actually fought for the little guys since before the events of the first movie. Then in this movie, he gets opportunities to fight for the little guy, aka the quantum people.
You guys just put the word quantum in front of everything?
But Cassie is the one character who on multiple occasions chooses to selflessly fight for the strangers who need help. So by the end, Scott only makes heroic decisions because he wants to save the ones he loves. Not something I hated about the story. I actually very much enjoyed how they fleshed out the character of Cassie. Now I know why she wants to be a superhero beyond just like being the daughter of one. Or like seeing New York get destroyed. That was so silly. Like a lot of people saw New York get destroyed and they didn't become a superhero, but whatever. But they seemed like they were going in one way with Scott, and then the movie was just like, nah, he's same old Scott. I've always liked the character of Scott more than I like these movies. He's very different from all the other MCU heroes. Not just because he's a little goofy or whatever, but because he's an ex-con and because he's a divorced dad. And he's actually a good dad. But between getting stuck in realms and going to jail, dude has lost a lot of time with his family. And as I mentioned earlier, that is literally his only motivation through all three movies. So yeah, it's pretty important to him. Didn't need the warrior lady character. They could have just combined her character with William Jackson Harper because he's actually a good actor. Though to that actress's credit, they didn't really let her do very much except fight and talk real tough. But no, Harper is great and could lead his own film if they wanted him to, so they should have just let him be the sole leader of the quantum tribe, the quantum-indigenous people. Michelle Pfeiffer was surprisingly great in this one. She's damn near the second lead of this movie. I was surprised that between her and Hope that she was the Wasp that got the most screen time. Though I'm pretty sure that had a lot to do with the fact that Evangeline Lilly got into some hot water last year. But I'm not gonna, you can Google that. I'm not getting into that shit. It's a shame though, because there were times where the dialogue felt a little disconnected and clunky, or there were moments where I felt like Hope and Cassie could have connected a little bit more. And I think the reason those moments feel so strange is because her scenes were pretty heavily edited. I like how Janet's relationship with Kang was developed, and the flashback scenes between the two of them were some of my favorites. You can see how much it pains him to fight Janet because they really did develop a friendship over their years working together. By the way, I cannot even tell if that is de-aged Michelle Pfeiffer or just regular Michelle Pfeiffer because Michelle Pfeiffer. But all this brings me to the real MVP of the film, Johnny Majors as Kang. Jonathan Majors may be the greatest actor working today. He's certainly the best actor for this role. Dude is being set up to play a multitude of different characters with different mannerisms and voices. Even seeing the differences in his performance in Loki compared to his performance in this is astounding. I mean, those two performances are just Nathaniel Richards going mad in different ways from doing different horrible things. Kang is very cold and calculating, but you can still see the pain and emotion in his actions. He's remorseful. He doesn't want to do what he's doing or what he feels he has to do, but he believes he is preventing something much worse. I love how the film ends in a sense of unease. The bookends of the film are Scott monologuing about staying positive because everything works out if you work hard and do the right thing. But at the end, we see Scott trying on that coat and it doesn't quite fit right. This isn't like his other adventures. What he did might have doomed all of reality. Everything seems so simple in the moment when you're fighting for who you love, but after the dust settles, Scott is terrified of what would have motivated a man like Kang to do what he did. If he was terrible and he was trying to prevent something terrible, imagine what that terrible must be. It's honestly a pretty horrifying thought, and it is a wonderfully written dramatic setup for an antagonist that looks like he's gonna be the looming threat over the MCU for the foreseeable future. And I wasn't even going to say anything about this at first, but I gotta address all the hate towards the movie. To all you guys who hate this movie, specifically the ones who claim to love Marvel movies and who claim to love Marvel comics, and the people who love Rick and Morty, to all those people who love all that shit and somehow hate this movie, I have one simple question for you.
What is wrong with you people? Huh? Your love is weird!
Like, are y'all seriously this mad about an Ant-Man movie? I'm hearing all these people talking about those first two movies like they were comedic masterpieces, and this is where they dropped the ball. Get all the way the fuck out of here with that shit. Yes, it has some jokes that don't land, but all of these movies do. Infinity War is one of my favorite Marvel movies, but that Zargnuts joke is dumb as fuck. Seems like a lot of people's problem with the movie is that this shit is happening in an Ant-Man movie. They don't like that it doesn't feel like the other Ant-Man movies. It's getting worse reviews than the first two, and like, have you seen those movies? I was being nice earlier, but Ant-Man and the Wasp is fucking awful. That shit feels like a Disney Channel kids movie. The plot is trash, and there's nothing funny about it. There's like not a single funny moment in that movie. That movie's bad. It's a bad movie. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get so... I'm not usually a meme drunk. This doesn't feel like the first two films, but I think that's for the better. Sure, there are jokes, but it isn't any more joke heavy than your standard Marvel flick, in my opinion. And this one made me genuinely laugh way more than both Ant-Man movies combined. I also loved how the movie was all about the original Ant-Man and the Wasp and the new Ant-Man and the Wasp working together in this science fiction adventure. People also don't seem to like the fact that Scott and Hope were the ones to defeat Kang since they're such lower power heroes. But if you think about it, Kang was in the quantum realm, so he couldn't access the power that arguably makes him so powerful, his manipulation and knowledge of all time. In the quantum realm, he's just a smart guy with really cool tech. That's why they trapped him there. The huge threat and fear of the movie is, oh shit, if this guy reaches the real world, he'll bend all of time to his will. And at the end, we find out that, oh shit, he's already in the real world, and there are a whole lot of him. I do wish that Kang had an abridged version of the monologue by He Who Remains from the Loki series, but from Kang's point of view. Sure, it would have retreaded some stuff we already know, but narratively it would have made more sense for the movie if Kang told Janet that story after he asked what she saw in the vision. And also, let me tell y'all something. All this comic book stuff is fucking goofy. In the words of Hawkeye,
none of this makes sense.
If you don't buy that Ant-Man and the Wasp could defeat a depowered Kang, you're definitely not going to when a fucking human Stretch Armstrong does it in a few years. Shit's about to get straight up unexplainable. This film posits the question, can you pretend that something isn't happening just because it isn't happening to you? We all build up these subconscious walls to keep us from paying too close attention or sympathizing with other people. Whether you're talking about the homeless, tragedy happening overseas, someone who doesn't look like you struggling for their civil rights, or a creature from another universe who has no holes. Though the movie takes place in another universe, the people who live there still live. Their existence matters as much as ours, and they deserve heroes just as much as we do. Theme very specific to the story in this movie, but that theme translates pretty universally. The more I think about this movie, the more I really enjoy it, and I think in a few years after the next two Avengers movies come out, people are going to look back at this a lot more fondly. This actually made me very excited about the next Avengers movie and our eventual actual MCU film featuring the Fantastic Four. Quantumania is a pretty damn good time and the second best Fantastic Four movie ever made. So far. My ranking, I liked it. Actually, hold on. I think I loved this movie. My ranking, I loved it? Nah, wait. I'm not gonna get crazy just because you guys are mean. Yeah, I liked it. My ranking, I liked it. Okay, that's it for this review. I could probably talk about this movie for another hour, but if you want to hear more of my thoughts on the flick, don't forget to check out the Drunk Banthas podcast.
Oh, hi. I didn't see you there. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click that little notification bell thing. Honestly, I could give a shit about the subscription numbers. I just like talking nerd shit with my friends. But if you do want to get updates on new episodes of the podcast and new videos, that is the best way to do it. So, all right, that's it, guys. Here's a picture of me as a cartoon.